Animal fat first, animal protein second. So we aren't just talking about calories when you talk about diabetes, because people focus on it. We are also talking about what the food is. Plant food is far more diabetic protective than animal protein and fat. That's the point. That's where I'm getting to. So we've got to understand both levels. People still talking about calories. Yes, it's important. But if it's animal or plant calories, it's even more important. So this is an interesting study. This is designed so there's no weight loss. There's only one factor. And they clearly show a meat versus a vegan diet that the vegan diet was the best in preventing and reversing diabetes. That was a very interesting study. Now, I mentioned that the estrogen factor, I'm just repeating it because that's, I don't know, I'm curious. Some people are aware of the estrogen in diabetes. Okay, well, some of you are pretty good, but it's a problem. Animal tissues having lower fiber also contribute to higher estrogen, and animal tissues have less antioxidant. In fact, it's more oxidative. That's a problem, okay? And therefore, there's more inflammation from animal flesh. I mentioned the leucine methionine, I'm kind of reviewing it, but what we see is the plant-based diets really are, one, healthier, but two, far more diabetes protective. Now, this is interesting. What they found is, comparing pre-diabetics in the study, those who followed the vegan diet found it much easier and were more successful. Isn't that interesting? People getting a little cheering from the back. Yes, yes, yes. You're telling the truth. Okay, I love it. Okay. But also, when they compared the diets, for the first 3 months, they were equal. But after 3 months, then the quality of life, well-being, was much higher with the vegan diet. That's the key. Okay. The other thing is acidity plays a role. It increases the rate of diabetes by 56%. Okay. Now, I mentioned ages, so it has to do with food preparation too. So if you bake it, process it, grill it, you're going to increase the amount of ages in the food. Okay. And I mentioned free radicals. They are an issue, particularly with the meat. But on plants, the antioxidants shoot up because plant food is very high in phytonutrients, antioxidants, and so forth. So that's another key. And plants boost our own ability to make antioxidants as well. So remember, the inflammation is a big deal. You see what I mean? And plant-based diet is far more anti-inflammatory. Generally, plant-based diets with the phytonutrients is going to be healthy for you. Anybody ever heard of a lipotrope? It turns out that what lipotropes do is they actually help organs that have too much fat in them release the fat. It's a new word. It took me a while to get that word straight. But lipotropes, which are in plants, actually decrease the inflammation from the fat because it helps those organs let go of the fat in their system. It decreases the fat buildup. Okay. So these are things to consider. I mentioned the fiber, and that certain gut bacteria can produce estrogens. So we have to eat in a way it doesn't do that. Okay. So I mentioned vegetarian women have 2 to 3 times more estrogen in their feces, which means we're getting rid of estrogen better. That's partly because of the higher fiber diet. Okay. These are important kind of subtle considerations. Okay. And so we get just much better results preventing and treating diabetes with the vegan diet. That's basically where it comes down to. Plus, we get less calories. Okay. So it's just a win-win-win-win-win. Less heart disease. People we have significantly more. Research shows that people who are vegan have about a third less heart disease, about 13% less cancers. There are all kinds of bonuses, but I'm trying to keep our focus primarily on the diabetes part. Couldn't help mention it though. So it's good for controlling weight. Definitely people on these diets do lose weight coming to their normal weight thing. We do increase cholesterol. We do decrease insulin. We increase insulin sensitivity. And we have way less oxidative stress. These are real important issues of the overall feeling. So, and people like it. People feel better on this diet, and they're more likely to stay with it. That was really interesting research. As they did this randomly pre-diabetics, plant-based, animal-based. They actually did better and liked it and were more successful on a plant-based diet. Okay? So that's kind of the key. The depression was less in people on a plant-based diet. Okay. So generally speaking, the more you're doing plant-based, the better. Now there's a little caveat. There's fascinating research done with Buddhists. Buddhists who were vegetarians, vegans, and Buddhists who weren't. They found that the average non-vegan human Buddhist had about 3% of meat in her diet as the average American woman. And the average non-vegan Buddhists had about 8% meat in their diet. They had 2 or 3 helpings a week of meat. So they still were pretty low. But when they compared them, and they put them on the diabetic approach, they found something really quite interesting. Is that the difference between 3% and 0. So if you're only eating 3% of your diet's meat, versus those who had meat, for the women it was a 4-fold increase in diabetes if you're having 3% of your diet meat. So even that little bit makes a difference. And for men, it was a double. 200% increase if you're having your 8% meat versus the men who were vegan. I'm going to summarize it. It's a very important teaching. So I used it. Last time I was here, I even said it. Or in Orlando, well, maybe a little bit's okay. 5-10%, not a problem. I was wrong. Problem with science, we say the truth. Don't kid yourself. It's the truth for the moment. Okay. So last year that was the truth. The new research comes out. Fine. Now we're seeing that even a 3% is going to quadruple your rate of diabetes. Well, that's the new truth. And for men, 8% increase is going to double your rate. See how that works? Just when we think we got it, you don't have it. So there's no real truth here. So science is progressive and relative. We're moving towards greater and greater understanding. So that little caveat is very, very important. Last year, myself, Herman, we were talking about something very specific. You can have a little bit, it's not a problem. Well, that's not true. I can't rewrite all my books. Okay, so it is a little bit of a problem, right? Because I say that in Conscious Parenting. But now, next edition, we have to have a little humor, we have to have a little humility. But I'm giving you where we are at this moment. And I think that's the important thing to understand. Here we are at this moment. Even 3% or 8% is too much. And increases rates of diabetes. So it's actually good news in a way, okay? People on a vegan diet were less likely to binge as well. So it's kind of good.
Watch your steps, son.
Basically, eating higher on the food chain is a problem. The research from the CDC shows somewhere between 95 to 96% all the pesticides, herbicides, and so forth are accumulated in the animal tissues. Well, what's the good news? Good news is if you're vegan, you're eating at the bottom of the food chain, and you're going to be less exposed to these things. You're less likely to take in toxins that are going to poison your beta cells and cause diabetes. That's the good news. And I think it's important. We talk about, this is very serious. Because of the pesticides and herbicides, we're looking at the sperm counts in men, and they've decreased. It's 50%. It's half of what it used to be. We're at a level where we go a touch lower and we'll have infertility. That's pretty serious, actually. There won't be enough sperm because it's being poisoned by the pesticides, herbicides, and so forth. What's the good news? Well, vegan men are going to be less affected by it because we're eating lower in the food chain. So it could be that we're going to populate the world more with vegan children. Sounds funny, but it could be the case. So I'm just kind of joking, but it is true. Eat lower in the food chain, you're going to be healthier. Period. Basically, the studies repeat themselves. You go vegan, you're going to have less diabetes. And I just discussed how much meat is safe to eat, 3% or 8%, 0%. 0% is what's safe to eat, and that's the point I want to make here in the big picture. So basically, that percentage is significant, okay? Fish is a big issue. People say, well, fish, what's the problem with fish? Well, there's big problems. They have definitely at least a 38% increase rate in diabetes. Basically, when I do the math, people have meat every day have a 19% increase in diabetes, and people have fish have a 35% increase in diabetes. So I've mentioned some of the main things. The biggest deal is that pesticides and herbicides are very high in fish. It really has to do with somehow the fish fat is particularly toxic to the beta cell. That's a big message in the story. And if you're having 2 helpings of fish a week, you will definitely start to affect your beta cell production. Okay, so that's a key thing.
Keep them busy. Everyone's got to go right now.
Well, the research showed too. Obviously, when you have
Nowhere to run. Come on out.
so fish eaters have a greater risk of getting diabetes. That's the point. And 2 servings a week are definitely going to decrease the risk. What about eggs? I had somebody who I read I was giving in Israel, and a dramatic improvement in diet, but still went home and was eggs. What about eggs? That's not a problem. That's not meat. Well, guess what? 1 egg per week increases the rate of diabetes by 76%. Okay, 1 egg a day is you're going to increase it. Really, 1 egg a day is going to increase it by 3. 2 eggs a week will increase it double. So eggs is a problem. Okay, so eggs are included in this use of diabetes. So I'm not going to lay down. I'm just going to deal with facts. So here we are, back to this list. Just so you know, we didn't forget, and we've covered a whole lot of the list. There's a few more pieces I want to cover. One is obesity, and you can see the chart at the top. North America and Cuba really includes Mexico. And we're looking at 82% of overweight having diabetes. And you can see it down the line. Weight is connected. It seems to be less so in Asian countries. I don't have a reason. I think it's a genetic reason. Their rates of diabetes increases aren't as directly related to obesity. So that's interesting. So we can, okay. Now, antibiotics are an issue. They're more an issue than I thought. So, fluoroquinolones are particularly an issue. What are fluoroquinolones? So, moxifloxacin, Avalax, the most disruptive to the blood cells. And then levofloxacin, levaquin, and Cyclo. Probably heard of it. They all increase the rate of diabetes significantly. Okay? And if you already have diabetes, it's even worse. It's kind of like a statin. If you already have diabetes, in fact, the statin is worse. You think it's toxicity, we don't know for sure. But if you have 5 different antibiotic treatments over 17 years, you're going to have a 50% increase in incidence. That's of any antibiotic. The fluoroquinolones are the most outstanding cause. Any antibiotic. And maybe it's because they disrupt the flora of the gut. We don't know for sure. Is it beta cell toxicity? Could be a little bit of all those. But what I'm looking at is that if you just had 2 to 4 prescriptions in something, it's a 23% increase. So it's significant. We want to kind of, there are emergencies that people may need to do antibiotics, but short of that, we shouldn't be taking it for colds because it doesn't work anyway. It's virus. But the point I'm making is something else. In terms of diabetes, antibiotic usage does increase your rates of diabetes.
Come on,
that's the important thing that we really have to understand. Statins are a big problem too. So I'm going to say between 40 80% increase in diabetes. So it's really 49% for Caucasian women, the Hispanic 57%, and then Asian women 78% increase in the rate of diabetes if you have statins. That's pretty significant. Okay? And we find with diabetics, if you take statins, you're going to get a 39-point increase in the blood sugar. If you don't take statins, then it's about a 7% to 9% increase. So we have all these statements about statins and diabetes, okay? So 7-point increase in non-diabetics. So kind of keep that in mind in the picture. I see a lot of people come to me with diabetes and they're all put on statins, so people worry about cholesterol. Cholesterol is not an issue. It's just not, particularly vegans, it's not an issue. But the truth is, and you'll see in a minute, the research over the last 30 years shows if your cholesterol is between 160 and 260, there is no danger of heart disease. That's really huge, millions of people in the studies. You just get it. So stop worrying about cholesterol. It's a non-issue. We'll see in a moment. There's nothing. So statins actually are causing diabetes, and people are being put on diabetes because their cholesterol is, somewhere in the 200s, nowhere near 260. Truth is, women with a cholesterol of 270 live 28% longer. Did you get what I expect? you need cholesterol for brain function, and the serum energetic. People with low cholesterol have a problem. 6 times more suicide. 6 times more suicide. I learned that in medicine. I knew about that because you need cholesterol to make the receptors for serotonin. Okay, so we got the overall picture. Statins are a problem. Here we take this into cholesterol. Obviously, what I'm just doing is physiologically. This is a study in Norway, 50,000 people, and what they found again, women with cholesterol 270 or higher had a 28% lower mortality. Just want to point out this is the Archives of Internal Medicine, April 13, 2009. 30 years of research. Okay, it was a summary paper. Archives of Internal Medicine is a big, highly esteemed journal. No evidence to support the widespread mythical belief that eliminating saturated fat is beneficial and potential for heart health organs. So the data didn't know that. Here's what you do. Low cholesterol. If it's less than 159, it's actually detrimental. And this we know, as a psychiatrist, I will tell you people with low cholesterol, more likely for depression, 4 to 6 times more likely for suicide. That's serious. Okay. Also, there are a lot of neurological problems in low. Cognitive decline is greatly accelerated, like about 4-fold. There are some real problems with low cholesterol. Okay. As I say, suicide is a pretty big problem. So you double your risk of suicide if you're in the lowest 25%. Also, low cholesterol, you're going to have 21% higher rate of premature deliveries versus 5% of a normal cholesterol. So we have increased emotional balances, suicide, depression, violent behavior, stroke is also increased, and memory loss. So it's actually a problem. So when I look at the literature, you want to be around 159, 160. That's as low as you should safely go. So this is the hard data. This whole cholesterol thing, again, if you're 160 to 260, there's no problem. That's the overall world, 30 years of research. So vegans don't have to worry about it anyway. It's not an issue. We won't go there. LDL also they go down in this program, and my program is 25 to 45% plant fat. And the LDLs go down too. Okay? This is a comparison back to Russell Sweeney, Dr. Ornick, 10% fat in the diet. So they say I consider that dangerous, big picture, holistic picture. Yes, you do 10% fat, you will lower your cholesterol, but I'm not sure that's so good. So from a holistic point of view, overall mental functioning, physical functioning, longevity, you want 160.
What are you, blind
But here's what
and
I say.
retarded?
Triglycerides are your biggest concern. What do I mean? Well, that's what actually is associated with heart disease.
Excuse me,
Triglycerides. What raises triglycerides? Triglycerides, carbohydrates. So my diet, 25 to 45% plant fat, obviously no normal fat, 25 to 45% carbs. It's much lower, 10 to
I beg your
15% protein.
pardon, moron!
So basically, you see the triglycerides on my diet is 69 versus 173 on the low fat,
What are you,
or
blind
252 on
and
the low fat diet.
retarded?
Definitely worth considering. Interesting enough, the cholesterol is around 160, normal liver function.
Not
So
me,
we
no
still get
way.
our desired cholesterol result, but we get lower triglycerides. Pretty important. Lots of references. Why I'm concerned is, again, another issue about the low-fat diet is it cuts out your omega-3s. You need your omega-3. You're going to have more longevity, more health, more protection from heart disease, less skin cancer, less breast cancer by 50%, better mental functioning, better stress functioning, better cognition. It improves, omega-3s improve acetylcholine, which you need for memory, and the other neurotransmitters, including GABA, which is an anti-anxiety. So that all happens when you have adequate omega-3. I'm talking as a psychiatrist here, but this is the thing. My work in psych diabetes is really about rebuilding the broken brain. So I'm doing a lot of work now in the brain research because it's fascinating. It's the next phase of my work. So many people with broken brains, it's beyond. So you've got to have your omega-3s. So we don't get them from fish, obviously, but we get them from where the fish get it. Yellow algae. It's pretty simple. So omega-3s are critical for pregnant mothers because babies need for brain tissue and eye and brain development. It also prevents big-time postpartum depression. You don't want to get low in omega-3. You want to really get postpartum depression and bipolar. So generally, overall contributes to building a healthy brain. It prevents against emotional imbalance, impulsivity, hostility, all these things. You get low omega-3s, all those things come up.
For earrings.
Okay. It also helps moderate the stress hormones, so you have excess cortisol, and then all
Everybody's
the
gotta
epinephrine secretions to get people hospitalized and so forth. So this is what. So that's kind of an overview why I like 25 to 45% plant fat. Because it doesn't really protect you in a way. Lack of sleep, as I mentioned, is a problem. People with sleep disturbance really have 2 to 3 times higher rates of diabetes. This is the radiation that's Fukushima. That's a dramatic question yesterday. And as I mentioned, radiation definitely increases the rate of type 2 and type 1 diabetes. Take the Fukushima, 60%. So, there's a big thing radiation also can do. Now, there are some problems with diabetes. The chronic degenerative pathology, and it's big. Retinopathy up to 85%. These are retinal function. Neuropathy about 70% of that. Nephropathy, kidney, 20 to 50%. All these reverse even in 3 weeks when you're on top of it. Okay, atherosclerosis, depression, a lot of people, 50%. Poor digestion, serious cognitive decline. All I see reverse in 3 weeks in the program. Okay, well, this is pretty exciting. Look at about 600,000 diabetics in the U.S. About 80% end up with ulcers, and about 40%, about 80,000 require amputation, and 40% die within 5 years. We don't want to go there. The cognitive decline is important. That is associated with excess sugar and with diabetes. For every 10 years you've been diabetic, your brain gets 2 years older. Okay, and brain size increases the higher your fasting blood sugar. So the brain size of diabetics decreases twice rather than non-diabetics. So brain size is reveal, heart attack, we're looking at 2 to 4 times more heart attacks. And this is cancer, particularly about 86. Best 70 to 85 for your fasting blood sugar, less than 100 is non-diabetic. So this is what a chart looks like. This is a glucose tolerance test, and you see the spiking up to 200. Above 180 is diabetes. Spiking, that's classic. That's when we're spiking. All these people will have all these kinds of effects by having after. It takes maybe 10 to 15 years to stay controlled in the cycle. And so the blood sugar being high is a problem, even if it's 105, 110, you're going to have increased heart disease and cancer. So be aware that we want to keep our fasting blood sugar off of 785, but the least less that's the big message there. Above 110, the beta cells die. So if you're above 110 for a few hours, you're going to be losing beta cells. Now, in the big picture, it's the number one cause of blindness, the number one cause of kidney failure, and now diet and exercise do work. I mentioned exercise will reduce by 50% diabetes. There's just people were just told they didn't follow it, but they got a 50% drop. Don't ask them why that is. How it's good. But with the pre-diabetes, they get a nice output. Didn't follow it, no change. If they heard it and considered a little bit, they got 50, 60%. If they follow it fully, 100%. Okay, so that's the key to get 100% drop. So it's interesting how it works. So the whole thing is we clinically decided to do it. And I'm going to kind of review it. Just keep going him also said radically changing our diets may be impractical, but actually it's worth it. And if you look at cover that's here. The general diet is pretty straightforward. All your leafy greens, all your vegetables, all your nuts and seeds that you want, non-sweet foods that we call tomatoes and avocados and cucumbers, bell peppers. A lot of people are against oils, fat, but actually it's fine for diabetes. Plus, if you're taking away the carbohydrates, which is what we do, you got to have something in there. Fermented foods are okay as well. The only sweeteners I use are stevia and xylitol. Okay? As you are healed for a longer time, you could have a few fruits back in the citrus, or some of the berries and cherries, that kind of thing. There's superfoods like pomegranate, pea pollen, I don't really recommend grains, but you can add grains in once you're pretty stable, or once you're stable. Here's how people come in. This person's supposed to have almost 400. Almost immediately the blood sugars go in the normal program. If you're type 1 diabetic, running about 400 blood sugars, if he goes to normal, he's still, 10 years later, he's still in the mid-80s. Okay? You start taking fish for a little bit, blood sugar goes up, so what's the problem? I'm only just taking, stop the fish and see what happens. Boom, get back down there. Pretty exciting. It doesn't matter what age. I have people, maybe 92 years old, sitting in a wheelchair, 13 different medications, obviously type 2 diabetes. In 3 weeks, she's out of the wheelchair, arthritis is gone, she's off her high blood pressure. Also, diabetes medication. She's walking around. She's healed, 92 years old. Doesn't matter. So we just see how quickly people respond and go to normal. We drop a lot of the tests out there, the blood sugars are 160, or they get some improvement. We're looking at 247, and we're getting dramatic improvement here. This is the inflammation I mentioned, so you have to both into 1/3 after just 3 weeks on the live food. That's dramatic. And we're back to where I was. I start with blood sugars around 247, I'm thinking about 160, 65. And we get this dramatic improvement again, 61% total healed for non-insulin dependent, 10% off medication, and 86.4% insulin dependent in 3 weeks, 24% cured. So we can go to this. So I'm going to summarize it now for you. And first, avoid all carbohydrates except leafy greens. And the healing phase, 25 to 35% carbohydrate. This is the 25 to 45% raw plant. Now, if I'm going to cut down carbohydrates, I have to add something. That's why I came into the whole fat issue. So, what's the problem with fat? I found there wasn't. 10 to 20% raw protein, but 10 to 15 is the average. The power of live foods to heal is remarkable. What's the difference between 40% decrease in medication and 97% off medication, 100% healed, in 3 weeks? And live food specifically decreases what I call the para-inflammation, key concept. Okay, we've got to deal with that. Weight loss happens naturally. We don't even think about it. Natural drop of cholesterol eating this way. You don't think about it. Overall, a vegan diet is going to give you 25 to 50% diabetes. All organic foods, with pesticides, herbicides, heavy metals are probably good business. Okay, so we got to go organic. It's actually a big deal. The other thing about organic, it's much higher in antioxidants. When they looked at it, organic food has more nutrients, more phytonutrients, but specifically, it's about 68% higher in antioxidants. So just overview. Moderate exercise, as I mentioned, adequate sleep, meditation, which we had another lecture about how to organize your diet according to your constitution. Just, it's overall a healthy way to live. This is not a diet for diabetes, this is a diet for getting healthy. Kind of take that distinction, make the distinction. And loving yourself enough to want to heal yourself. You gotta love yourself enough to want to heal yourself. Pretty important.
I can't take much more than
I was taken by surprise by any new example of common sense. Because I'm not telling you anything big, I'm just saying go back to the natural ways. No big deal. I'm doing a lot of work with personal holistic healing, changing yourself better. Because I'm also extremely interested in healing the broken brain, and I have to right now, part of the work around the world, working for that. So I think to build up what I'm doing there, and the supplements that we have a specifically organized on what I'm talking about. So it's really good to share with you these wonderful ways to be healthy. Blessings to everybody. I appreciate the audience because it's a mutual appreciation. Because you didn't get here by accident. You got here because you had some understanding. So I honor you for your understanding. And in a few minutes, you're going to do a panel, but I'm going to be able to sign in a little bit, tips or whatever. Okay? So blessings to everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Love Fruit Podcast. We have here another fantastic, legendary guest, and for the first time we've ever interviewed him, and that's Dr. Gabriel Cousens. And Dr. Cousens is an American physician, a homeopath, a spiritual writer and teacher, a yogi, and a Native American sun dancer. He has spoken in over 42 countries about the benefits of the lifestyle that he advocates, a live food, vegan way of life. He is the founder of the Essene Order of Light, a spiritual organisation based on teachings from the Jewish
Get the fuck out of the way!
modern interpretations of the Essenes. He founded the Tree of Life Centre in 1993 in Arizona as a health retreat and raw food rejuvenation centre, and he has over 100 prevention of diabetes programmes promoting a vegan way of life around the world. And his commitment is to bring this message, live foods and a vegan diet, to as many nations as possible around the world. And he's spoken in over 42 countries, as I mentioned before. So, Dr. Cousens, is there anything else you'd like to add to that illustrious list of achievements before we get going?
Well, really, I'm really here to serve, and my main focus right now is bringing that message to the world, spiritual message and live food vegan message. That's really what I'm doing. I'm putting it out on Facebook about 5 days a week, and that's my commitment to this. So, I didn't start with live foods initially as a philosophy. In 1973, my wife was pregnant with her second baby. We had this nightmare. We both had the same nightmare that the fetus was a chicken and we were eating the fetus.
Oh my God!
In one day, we became vegan. So that's a strange way to make a transition.
You should have got out of the way!
And then over the next period of time, I lived in India, I don't know, for 7 years. I slowly moved. Well, let's put it this way. I received what we call Shaktipat from Swami Bhaktivinoda, 1975. And when I went into nothing, I came out and a little voice said, you need to learn to eat and live in a way that's supposed to give you energy. It's transformative energy power that we have in the human system. And that got us going. We learned to eat. Okay, pretty important. So I began thinking, what is the best diet for spiritual life? So between 75 and 99% vegan, 100% vegan, 99% live food. That's since 1983. I kind of got clear that the optimum diet for spiritual life, the best to listen to a superconductor of the mind, was a live food vegan diet. That's how I arrived at it. I didn't arrive at it for other philosophical reasons. It was initially from a spiritual point of view. That's not the usual way you go about it, but that's kind of the key. I don't want to get too much into subtle anatomy, but there's a reason why I came to this conclusion besides it works. I mean, you got to start with that. Is that we have a subtle anatomy called the nines. There's 72,000 of them. Now, the point I'm saying is meat, fish, chicken, dairy, and eggs drive the flow of spiritual energy. Subtle things. And I saw that when people stop doing that, there's a much greater flow of the community energy. So that was honestly where I was going. And, since then, I said life food is really healthy. 20 hats in the undefeated I could do 70 push-ups and 7 pull-ups, which was better than anyone else could do. So at the age of 60, now that's being on a live food diet for 30 years, I was able to do 601 push-ups.
Whoa.
And 100 pull-ups.
What? That's a lot.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is, what's very clear. Okay, so my age now, my chronological age is 77, okay, roughly. And so I'm up to 500 push-ups every few days, and 80 pull-ups. So and I'm way more flexible. When I was 20, I couldn't cross my legs. I was so tight, and I couldn't touch the floor. Right now, I put my palms on the floor and sit cross-legged for a few hours. What happened? So besides doing the yoga, which I do 6 days a week, being on the live food vegan diet, I became more flexible and more strong. So with age, this is the kind of important message here. With age, we can become stronger and more flexible and have more energy and endurance. So what we're seeing is, wow, we're not reversing age. We are just living healthier, stronger, and more flexible than when we're even younger. So we can improve with age if we're on this kind of diet. So that's kind of a really important message, because people have all these myths about you're going to go vegan, you're going to waste away, or live food, even worse. That's just simply, if you're doing it right, is not the problem. Is not a problem, doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
That's going to take me to one other point I want to make, and that is doing it right. So under my supervision, I really get about a 99% success rate putting people on the live food vegan diet. Now, how come? What am I doing? People are unique individuals. We have 20 to 30,000 genes, maybe 200,000 gene variations. And we even have a chromosome 19, that says how much protein, carbohydrate, and fat you should have in your diet. And the key is eating according to your genetics. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I'm not going to go into that whole discussion unless you want to go there. But how to individualize your diet. We're unique beings. We aren't cows. We don't just need grass. So there's a mix. And the research kind of suggests 70% need a higher protein. I'll explain that in a minute. And 30% need a lower protein. So what are we talking about? So the research out there says there's a thing called the mTOR pathway. M, capital T, capital O, R pathway. And it basically says for optimal longevity, optimal anti-cancer, we want to be between 35 and 70 grams. In the meat eating world, 70 grams is still quite low. You see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's still a relatively low protein diet. And that's an important little piece to kind of understand. So people who are low, and I'm a person who doesn't eat much protein. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second, but I'm about 10% protein. Other people maybe need 15, 20%, still not that much. But we can easily get it at a lot of protein. It's just a problem.
Sure.
Cook your food. You can only 50% of protein, 67% of vitamins and minerals, and 95% of phytonutrients. Obviously, going raw, you can eat half as much, literally, and get full nutrition. You can easily get the full nutrition, and it's on raw, and you don't have to eat as much. So all that kind of goes together. So I'm going to say one more thing. The protein you need varies a little bit with age. So men, the researchers are men in their mid-40s will have excess protein, which is not really going to happen with vegans. We get adequate protein. We get double the amount of protein we generally need. Okay, so not a problem. But if you have too much, you're doubling your rate of mortality, quadrupling your rate of cancer. Okay, but that changes with age. So at 65, I noted that the research shows that we need slightly more protein. At that point, I was doing about 8% protein, and I was around 25 pull-ups, and I was feeling stuck. So I said, okay, let me make one change. I took one heaping tablespoon of blue-green algae, E3 live a day, and that's where I went up to my 100 pull-ups. Just by adding that little bit of protein. So these things aren't big, massive type things. Easy to get with the vegan life diet, but it still requires some thoughtful little adjustments to make a big difference. So that's kind of a teaching message for people.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. And the thing that I'm most interested in there, Dr. Cousins, is there's a lot of different reasons that people come into the raw live foods lifestyle, and vegan lifestyle. And many people come in because of health issues, and some because of the ethical animal rights side. But you're an example of someone that's come, it seems the first initial interest was actually to do with the connection between diet and spirituality. So I'm guessing what you're saying is you weren't actually particularly sick at that point. You weren't desperate to change your lifestyle for any particular reason. But
that's completely correct.
Because of the spiritual path you were on, and that's similar. I resonate with that quite a lot as well, because I felt that as well when I kind of transitioned to this kind of lifestyle. And one thing I wanted to ask is, obviously you got that voice and that clear message to change, to learn how to eat, to go towards more foods. There seems to be a lot of spiritual teachers and gurus and leaders over the years who haven't made those changes to their diet. What do you think the difference is there?
Well, it's an interesting question. And one of the things is that all the great traditions but one, and it really is either Plato, or vegan. You go back to Gan Eden, it was a live food diet.
Right.
Okay? It's not that complicated. It was very straightforward. So the great traditions, as I say, except one basically teach what I just said.
Yeah.
And all I've done is kind of gone back to it by my own experimentation. Okay, So one of the things I teach, I can call it the way of holistic liberation. So what am I saying? A lot of the teachers, for a variety of reasons, are only looking at your state of consciousness. But they're not seeing the whole thing. They're not seeing the diet. Well, how's the diet? So if you go vegan, what are you saying? Well, you're not killing animals. You're not creating cruelty. There's people who are, the world are vegan, we can feed the world 7 times over. If we're live food, we can feed it 12 times over. It's like, wow, no famine, no, okay. Environment, huge. Going vegan is a huge impact on the water and the air, okay, and the quality of earth, and how much earth we use. Cattle use a huge amount of earth. So one vegan, depending on the statistics, 16 vegans can live on the same amount of land that a vegan.
Yeah.
So we have the environment, we have the water, we have the clean air. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, the reason I say that is something went off. Okay, we have really feeding the hungry. Like, what do we have today? Estimates are 44,000 kids starve to death each day, not each year. 15 million. That can all go away. I do a lot of work in Africa. I'm working in only 6 different countries in Africa and in Mexico and different places. So feeding the people is pretty important. So if you kind of see the big picture, and you see that we're all one with the living planet, which is an environmental message, obviously, we're one with the planet. Going live food vegan has the least amount of negative ecological impact on the planet. So we preserve the ecology of the planet, we preserve human life, we feed the hungry. There's another, obviously we begin, you got more healthy because we know that meat eaters have 32%, I'll say it another way. If you go vegan, you have 32% less heart attacks. Depending on the type of cancer, you have 2.3 times less colon cancer, 4 times more ovarian cancer, eating eggs. It goes on and on and on. But the point I'm making is it's not
out of my face,
and we also know that vegan live food, but the data is for vegan. Live food is a minority. Is that men live about 7.2 years longer and women live 4.4 years longer. So the data for longevity, health, well-being is a big deal. Now I'm going to share one more thing. It's called fertility. The research shows that 95 to 96% of the pesticides, herbicides, anti-sperm, anti-ovarian stuff is in animal fat. So when we lower the food chain, what happens? We're going to become more fertile. So I'm not joking when I say, if the way we're going, live food vegans will be the ones who will be reproducing. The amount of fertility is really decreased. And so, actually, I'm not joking, because the lower we are in the food chain, the better it is. For example, when they put kids just on organic. So I want to say, I'm talking about live food, organic, vegan, which a lot of live fooders are anyway. What we know is you put kids on organic and they have 1/4 to 1/6 the amount of pesticides and herbicides in the blood within a short time. A vegan mother who's breastfeeding has only 1 to 2% of the toxins in the breast milk as a mother. So these are huge implications. That's why they have the fertility. So I'm just adding, like a bigger picture. Now, a lot of people in the spiritual world, answering your question, are saying it's all about the mind and the body doesn't count. But my approach to holistic liberation, which is what I'm talking about, is everything matters. The heavens and earth aren't separate. So the mind is not separate from the body. What happens in the mind affects the body. What happens in the body affects the mind. So that's kind of the difference in perception between a holistic approach to liberation and just kind of a mental part. That's what we're talking about.
And you've got an interesting, you were a physician, I believe. Was it psychiatry that you did at one point?
Yes.
And was that before the live foods and the spiritual awakening, or was that something? What was when did that come into your life?
It was actually before. And here's how it evolved. So I graduated from my 3-year psychiatry residency in 1973, but I went into kind of more general practice. How did that happen? Well, I saw that the state of the mind is affected by the state of the body. If your blood sugars are off, if you're eating junk food, it affects your consciousness.
Yeah.
Junk food, diet creates a junk food consciousness.
Sure.
Okay. And I wasn't taught that in medical school. That was like way far out.
Yeah.
So I began to see the connection between mind and body and mind. Now, at those times, not much was being said about it, so it was like my own personal discovery. So when I saw those two, then I kind of said, well, fine, I'm not even going to see people for psychotherapy unless I can get their bodies healed. And then many, many, many mental things cleared up. A lot of depression is from poor diet. A lot of anxiety, for sure, is from poor diet.
Right.
So that's how I got into hypoglycemia, how I went to developed a natural live food, and life was a big part of that. Live food vegan treatment program for diabetes, healing diabetes in 3 weeks. What I mean by 61% of non-insulin dependent diabetes healed in 3 weeks, and 24% of insulin dependent healed in 3 weeks.
with 86%
Sorry, man, I'm not-
alcohol in 3 weeks. So that's pretty fast. Okay?
Yeah.
That's better statistics than the other studies that have been out, which is at 5 years. So like there's a vegan study that shows you decrease your medication need by 40%. Fine. Our decrease is actually, big picture, 97% are off all medication in 3 weeks, not 5 years. So live food is hugely important. It's dramatically more effective for healing diabetes, 3 weeks versus 40% less medication in 5 years, than just the vegan diet. So that's very notable. I kind of want to point that out.
Yeah,
That's what.
And so how did you transition away from that career? Because obviously a lot of people would think that's pretty good stable career and everything, being a medical doctor or psychiatrist. And I guess you transitioned towards doing your own thing really, and having your own sense and everything. But were you just not able to do what you wanted to do in that?
No, not at all. I'm still doing it. It's just we have different cycles in our lives. So I kind of cut down my practice, my private practice, and I could just support it a little bit. And since 2007, I developed these programs all over the world because I said, well, that's fine. Let's bring it to the world. And so it's a humanitarian kind of outreach. That's kind of part of it. I've been doing humanitarian work since 1960. I work with black gangs in the south side of Chicago. Lived in Central Harlem for 3 years. Did all kinds of work. So it's just part of what I do. But I actually am still open to see a few people for holistic healing. I see people all from 128 different nations. I just came back from Brazil where all but one person healed their diabetes in just a 2-week program. And the other person went from 280, which is very high blood sugar, down to 140. So, I'm still doing it. I'm just doing it in a more concentrated way.
Yeah.
So I've trained people to take over some of this. But personally, I'm doing everything, but I'm standing in the more public vegan, live food, and spiritual teachings.
Excellent. And when you were getting into the live foods and everything, to go back to the start of that, and at that point, who were the people that you were learning from, or was this something you had to learn on your own, or did you have teachers? Did you have books to follow? What was the journey like for you?
It was a great question. Basically, I'm a researcher. I got to figure this out. I'm in India. I'm not part of the Ann Wigmore type thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I can see what works. I can see what doesn't work. And I have a few thousand people in the ashram I'm taking care of. Kind of a traveling mission. And it got kind of clear what really worked. Okay, so that's kind of how I learned. Later, I'm going to say later, after I wrote my first book, Spiritual Nutrition Rainbow Diet, in '86, I began kind of meeting people.
What happened?
I didn't see when I was finally back in the United States in
What happened? What the
1983.
fuck?
I met a few
Hands
live people that
off.
came to me, and I also saw, just again, as a clinician, a lot of people are out of balance. What's the problem? So I have an Ayurvedic background. I'm a diplomat in Ayurveda as well.
Did you see that?
And
You a psycho?
what I saw is people were too much on nitty-gritty. So from an Ayurvedic point of view, we have kapha, pitta, vata. I'm just generalizing. So
Oh,
the type of diet that was going on was a highly vata, disorganizing diet. Too much prana, not enough pitta, and not enough what we call kapha.
fucking police. Haven't they got
So,
better
okay,
things
well,
to do
we
than
just
pull
can't
over
do this
drunk
on the beginning.
drivers?
That's why traditional
You a
Ayurveda
hater.
will say, no, can't do life. Well, because they're taking life
Hi
foods like
there.
sprouts and leafy greens.
Think you're some
So
kind of
what I
Einstein,
added to the
don't you?
story, that's why there's a high success rate, is I saw people needed more protein in that. That's easy. And they needed more fat.
Look at
Nuts and
me
seeds are
like one,
fantastic.
aren't you?
Then we have spirulina, chlorella, blueberry. There is no problem getting enough protein, but if you're not doing it, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So I began, this is what we call the kapha. So kapha is water in, let's say, water. So people on the going thing with Whitmer was air, space air.
Yeah.
So when I added that, then it's like, I need to write about this because people in the movement in general are way focused on just having your vata aggravating things, which are good, you get a good high, you move the prana, but you're not, and they also were too alkaline. I had a system where I could measure the blood, urine, and saliva, and so I could measure what was happening on long-term, high leafy green sprout diet. People became too alkaline. When you get too alkaline, you also get spacing and growth. So as we added the blue-green algae and the spirulina, chlorella, and the nuts and seeds, people got more grounded, and it also brought them back to optimum acid-base balance. So in the blood, which is hard to measure, optimum is 7.46, slightly alkaline. Okay, 7 is neutral. And your urine pH should be between 6.4 and 7.2. So I even saw myself. I mean, if I fast, my urine, which I do twice a year, my urine pH will go up to 8. I'll get a little spasms, a little different thing. But I have 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and I bring my urine pH, which is an easy measure of our body pH. First year in the morning, 6.4 to 7.4. That's where I began bringing people to. And that's the concept. So, 2 problems. The Vata derangement on the traditional leafy green sprout primarily, and excess alkalinity. So when I address both of those problems, let's bring this to balance, okay? There's non-variations of kapha, pitta, vata, but let's just bring it to balance so everything is in order. They're called doshas. That was 1. But 2, let's get your pH in order. So when I solved those 2 out, I realized, well, that's an issue as I began, again, seeing clients, because there weren't that many live doctors at that time. So people began coming to me. Then I said, well, I need to write my first book. I need to start talking about this.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
It does make a lot of sense. So where, and I guess just to fill in for a lot of people, obviously, Anne Wigmore, that style was to do with sprouts and greens, green juices and things like that. And that's kind of been followed on by the Hippocrates style of things. It's still there now, the Hippocrates.
Yeah, I'm pretty good friends with Brian Clements.
Sure.
And who runs Hippocrates. And he's kind of moved toward, he and I are in agreement. Basically, of all the different people in life who've been vegan, he and I are very aligned. But he's kind of moved that way. So he's teaching this more balance. You got to have more protein. You got to have, there's more balance. So we're really aligned because they have shifted away from it.
So what for you is your ideal kind of live food diet on a day-to-day basis, and has that changed over the years at all?
The ideal is, again, well, what I teach people, because not everybody's ready to go to 99 to 100% live food. I enjoy it, okay? I'm like a spiritual athlete. I'm going to do whatever is going to get me to where I want to be.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I really enjoy life foods.
Sure.
Okay, so it's not a discipline for me.
Yeah.
My wife Shanti is from New Zealand. She was a vegan, teaching veganism when she was 18. This is our way of life. So, kind of get that. It is part of my life, so it's not a struggle. However, if you're starting out, I say at least get to 80% live, 100% vegan. So first, let's get the vegan. Okay, that's a big jump for a lot of people. Okay, for me it was 1 day, but that was an extreme nightmare, right? Mm-hmm. And then maybe it'll take you a year to get to live food, but try to get to 80%. So what my observation is, how do clients do? How is it once they get to 80%, it may take 2 years to get all the benefits of live food.
Yeah.
Versus go to 100% in 3 months, you're in a very high-powered state. So it may take longer, but I'd rather get something people can do that they can sustain and be successful. Like I say, you gotta be able to do it. It's like, who's going to do that? But once they reach 80%, then they're going to start moving. My initial goal, where I see it really works over a long period of time, is 100% organic as much as possible. I like 99%.
And for someone like yourself that's closer to 100% or 100% live food, do you eat 3 meals a day, or how do you eat and
So in the evolution, and not on purpose, a lot of what I did is just observing me. I don't go with theories of how it should be.
Sure.
I'm a researcher. Everybody makes things up. So I actually have 1 meal a day. Now, let me qualify that so it's clear. So I usually eat between 12 and 2. This is the 10 to 2 p.m. is what we call the pitta time of the day. Mm-hmm. Best digestion, best fire. That's when I have my big meal, which is basically salad and nuts and seeds. Okay, and try to make some kind of interesting entree as well. Okay, in the morning, I have soaked goji berries. And just like a touch of tahini to make it taste. I love goji berries. Goji berries are one of the top longevity herbs. So that's just an overview. I'm not going to talk about longevity herbs right now, unless you want. And then for dinner, I try to be hydrated. So I'm going to have a juice or some kind of soup. That's it.
Nice.
So I don't eat much. It evolved that way.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is play with your diet. You need to be as strong as you were eating 3 meals a day on 1 meal a day. Your energy has to be as strong. You have to be good energy all day long. I don't get tired. I don't take naps. I just go. And I'm working probably 12 hours a day, probably more. I actually have to stop for a second.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty clear on what you're eating on a day-to-day basis. You also wanted to add in, I believe, you take some other things as well on top of that?
Yeah, I take some supplements. In my book, I concluded that most everybody needs B12. Now, there are a few people who don't immediately need B12. But after 5 years, I'm going to estimate. Let's wait. 40% of meat eaters are B12 deficient.
30%, 30.
40%.
40%.
But that's not an accurate figure because that's at the minimum, which is like 200 nanograms.
Right.
That's minimum. If you go to 400 or 450 nanograms, which people think is optimal, of human active B12, not mineral. I'm going to estimate about 80% of meat eaters are B12 deficient. Well, that's pretty high percentage. Yes, are vegans going to be B12? Maybe they're 80, 90%. So the truth is everyone's B12 deficient. You take your risks, okay?
Sure.
There are physiological variations. Some people from their colon are able to absorb, this is where we're making human active B12s in their colon, are able to absorb more. There's a pathway that brings it back to the small intestine. There's genetic variation. But 80% of meat eaters at the optimum B12 are deficient. So I'm saying everybody needs B12. And meat eaters actually have a lot more deficiencies in general. But I want to make it clear that vegans and live fooders are less deficient than meat eaters. Because everybody asks the other question, where do you get your B12? Well, if you're a meat eater, where do you get your B12? Okay, so I recommend everybody do that. Most people I see today, maybe it's because of the stress in the world, the environmental stress, the emotional stress, we burn up a lot of Bs. So I see a lot of people, because I'm checking people on this all the time, below in B3, B6, and so on. I generally recommend people use what I call food concentrates. No synthetic, just raw organic food concentrates. There's a few companies that do that. And they ask also, the B12, the human active B12 is a particular bacteria. And some of these companies have cultures of that and they add it in. So you're getting human active B12. So I recommend, obviously, it'd be low potency because when it's real, we don't need as much. Okay, if you're getting 50 or 100 of this and that, that's for sure synthetic. It doesn't work the same. The same with vitamin C. Humans don't make vitamin C. So I use a food concentrated vitamin C. So these are all kind of things we carry in an online store, Dr. Cousin's online store. But those are some of the basics. And then according to whatever else, I use a lot of different herbs. Okay. The other thing is a lot of people, particularly in England, are going to be deficient in vitamin D. And they say, oh, you need 400 IUs. That's not true. You need a minimum of 2,000 to 10,000, depending on the person, to get blood levels of around 80 to 90 versus the minimum of 30. Vitamin D is really important for brain function, for immune function, for preventing cancer. It makes everything kind of work. So those are kind of some considerations. So I do take a little study to kind of cover that potential, but they're all what we call food concentrates. No synthetics, much lower potencies. So I actually do recommend that. That's what I see. I haven't seen one person in 47 years I've been living who doesn't have some deficiency.
Right.
Yeah, and mineral deficiencies are a thing too. Again, less so for vegans. Why? Well, because vegans get a lot of vitamin C for iron, for example, and it helps bring iron into the system. So actually, this may sound outrageous, but vegans may be less iron deficient than meat eaters because they have a better way to put it in. So that's how I do it. And then herbs for healing, endocrine stuff for diabetes. The diet, the life of diet is the main healing agent.
Yeah, fantastic. And your journey to the way you eat now, was the transition difficult, or did you find it relatively easy to transition to a live food lifestyle, or did it take years? What was your kind of experience with that?
I would call it really easy. I tend to go for two reasons. How does it make me feel? I'm going to go to whatever makes me feel good. Good means strong, energetic, active, flexible. That's all part of the good. Energy all day long, mind clear. And I'm going to eat whatever does that. And live food diet, live food vegan diet, it does what does it. So as I discovered it, I got more and more that way. So that's kind of how that went for me. It varied. It was really probably living in India, probably traveling. It was I'm going to say it was an immediate process, but given the right setting, it's harder to be live food in India. But the minute I got back to the United States, it was like immediate.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the kind of mistakes you've seen people make? Because obviously not everyone is able to stick to this kind of lifestyle. And what have been some of the problems and the challenges, the mistakes you think people make on a live food kind of diet?
The biggest mistake I think is going too fast, and then rebelling. Right. So I just think, okay, get vegan first. Don't worry about live food. Go vegan first.
Right.
Oh, now you're vegan, great. You're stable with that. okay, now let's start increasing your amount of live food. Make it to 50%. Great. Maybe it'll take a month or two. Find your recipes. Find what you're doing. Okay? And then get at least to 80%. Stable. Feel happy. Feel how good. Give it a few months. Then you can progress. So I kind of protect people. I think that's the biggest thing is don't get idealistic and try to go too fast. You listen to your body. Trial and error. Are you in full energy? You're not doing it. Yeah, so I do a lot with feedback. Hey, if you aren't full energy, if you aren't clear all day long, you're missing something. Go back, figure it out, and then proceed. That way, success one step at a time.
You're screwed now, JB. Don't use that thing.
That's pretty much. Get
down! I'm gonna shoot. I got
you have to figure out whether you're going to do 7 days, 5 days, something else to do. You have to integrate that. Those are the two things. I am very clear of breeding success.
Fantastic. Now I want to talk about the Essenes and the Essene, based organisation that you started and everything. And I've learned a little bit. I've seen a little bit about the Essene Gospel of Peace and different things like that. And I just obviously you know a lot about these things. Could you tell us a little bit about that? About what that is, the spiritual beliefs, how that ties into veganism and everything else?
Well, the Essenes, and I think it's important for everybody to understand, they weren't just unified. The Essenes probably started about 500 BC. It's said that Pythagoras, who was the great vegan, right? Before the word vegan came, and with Watson in 1944,
sure.
From England, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Before that, people were called Pythagoreans.
Right.
So the story, historically, the best I can get, and I can't tell you that's accurate, but the best I can get, is that he came from Greece, trained with the Essenes on Mount Carmel. So we have a note of them, 500 BC.
Right.
He came down as a live food vegan. Okay, so we have that kind of understanding. Now, he was pretty intense. Now, they didn't have juicers, so you couldn't even follow Pythagoras unless you did a 40-day water fast. So he was one of the great teachers there, but he learned from the Essenes. So the Essenes were all over the Middle East, and I've been at most of the sites. So we have Lake Mareotis in Egypt. I have not been to Damascus, but they went as far as Damascus, where we have a spiritual fasting retreat. We're doing it near the Dead Sea, near Qumran, which is a Dead Sea we're like 10 minutes. And so, but they were all over the Middle East. That's the key thing I want to say. They weren't Jews. And probably at the height of the 35,000. So they were pretty intense, pretty focused. We can make an argument that John the Baptist and Jesus were at sea. And his brother also. So he was gay. He had bread. He only had bread when he was born. That's in the circle. So what would you say? There was an inner circle that was 100% not vegan. And they were more distributed and their belief is really what we do. This didn't need to do it, but this helps become a superconductor. That's what their system is. And then there was another circle outside of that, you see what I'm saying, that added dairy. And so we can say the inner circle was 100% not vegan, and then they had the dairy, which is live food then, but they had a little bit more cooked food, and those are really the two big shifts. And you can't really call yourself a Essene according to the practices if you aren't in that realm.
Right, I see.
Okay. Dietarily. The Essenes were focused on God, obviously, and they did a lot of intense practices. It was all around that. So they divided their day, 4 hours of service work. A lot of them were healers, and that was part of what they did in the larger community. A lot were farmers.
Delicious beef patties.
Okay, and so they did that. They had 4 hours of study, prayer, meditation, and 4 hours of eating food, socialization, education, that type of thing. So that's what they did. They did have families. We can say that Jesus and John actually came not from Qumran, but they actually came near the Sea of Galilee. And I've been there. Okay.
Right.
And right above that is the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
I've been there.
Okay.
Because it's right there. So I've been actually, and I've also taken when Jesus went in the River Jordan. There's a particular thing about what we believe is, it's right there. It could be. It's right around. You go past the Dead Sea and you're boom, you're at the Jordan. 10 minutes from where we live. So I've taken what he did, what we call mikvah, or a ceremonial bath in there. people can go there now. They have to wear these gowns and things. I would just go to the side because you're not supposed to take kind of your clothes on. It's supposed to be like the baby room. I would kind of go off to the side without clothes. You can do that.
Sure.
But so that's kind of the Essene lifestyle. It's the fast track focus, intense focus on God. They were their focus was spent before, and the Essene can also be translated from Hebrew as doers of the Torah.
Right.
So that's kind of that, and so it's a more committed way of life.
I see.
And we were doing Essene gatherings and things because I'm reaching more out to the world. I'm not having as much time to organize that. So we just have Essene support groups. If people want to link into that, just go to drcousins.com and say, well, I want to be part of the Essene.
And you also obviously run the Tree of Life Centre, and what do you do there, and what happens there, and how can people learn more about that?
So we made a transition because I couldn't do everything.
Uh-huh.
Right now I'm just finishing a spiritual autobiography. It's about 500 pages called Into the Nothing, which is or dissolving into the nothing, which is more meditative. But it's a lot of teachings, but it's my own spiritual autobiography. All that takes time, and then I'm traveling all the time. So I had to make a decision. Well, actually, we live in cycles. So after 25 years, I've actually cut down a lot of the centers so people can't stay here residentially.
Right.
So where I'm talking from right now is where our office is. We have 2 acres. We're completely off the grid, completely solar. Our well is solar. Okay, everything is solar. I'm talking to you on solar energy. Right? So we're doing that. We're looking at
I'm fast, motherfucker.
and people come and they can stay locally, and they can still do spiritual fasting, individualized spiritual practices. People can come to individual diabetes programs. People come for whole person healings. I do have twice a year that I'm doing here. I'm doing things in Israel, different places. But here I'm doing 2 3-day intensives, meditation intensives, and 1 0 point. And the next one actually is March 19th. And we're meditating 3 hours a day. I've been given to what we call the power of awakening community. The power of Shaktipat was given to me by Soren Muktaman when you get knowledge. I said awakening. But also in the Torah tradition. Okay, so we give Shaktipat, helps awaken the Kundalini, and almost everybody gets awakened. So 3 days of that, and then 4 days of what we call 0 point, which is a process of working with the mind. It's a Western version of what we call Jnana Yoga, which is yoga of the mind. And it shows you how to delete the thought forms of the mind that block you from liberation. So that immediately follows the 3-day intensive, so people can be here for that. And in the fall, I offer again 3-day intensive. That's all I'm really doing here. I just got back from Brazil, teaching for 21 days. I'm trying to do it, so I had to cut down what I'm doing here. When I'm here, we do individual spiritual fasts, we do diabetes programs, get whole-person healings, that kind of stuff.
Excellent. So, and if people want to learn more about you and what you're doing, would drcousins.com, is that the place to go to learn?
That's the place to go. We've made it real simple. We have obviously mailing list. People want to be on that. I've just done a lot of work on the whole coronavirus 19, and I've come up to briefly. Everybody's going to be exposed. That's not the problem. The problem is how you're going to be healthy enough to not be affected by it.
Right.
So I have a whole protocol that I put out in my newsletter. I'm not putting it on the internet because it made that kind of hard, but on my newsletter. So if people want to sign up to the newsletter, just go to drcousins.com and read where it goes. And that's where I'm doing more private information because of the censorship. You are aware of that, right? Internet. So how do we reach people and give them how to protect yourself? You can. And my feeling is, most of it's going to be exposed, fine. Don't worry about it. Just do things that really protect you from getting it. So we have things that include work in the past with coronavirus, say weaponized coronavirus like SARS and MERS. And we're working with them, and I'm pretty sure we're going to work with them. All that is available. So newsletter. If you want to do part of the monthly conferences,
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And for everyone that's listening, thanks for joining us. If you liked this episode, this interview, then please feel free to share it with anyone else who might be interested. If you want to comment or give us feedback, you can do that. You can also go on the iTunes, you can make podcast so thank you very much for joining us today. Have you got any last message for the audience?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you for the video. Really important to
You got it. You ain't going nowhere. We got you in there.
and I just for other people to live. Doing that and making that stuff to be out. I am willing for proper arrangements to come and speak. I do some speaking. Sure. And that's the first thing. The second thing I want to encourage people is that, because I kind of get it, a lot of food vegans adding the spiritual component to really become a powerful light to the world where there's so much confusion. And so I bless everybody that would inspire to do that, light to the world, a total holistic lifestyle. Excellent.
Me! I wish I felt sorry, but I don't. Watch it, cottage cheese pie. Hey, yo! Yeah, I'll print it. The next part of my talent, you know? Try looking where you're going. Well...
Oh man, who's got a gun?
I don't believe this! You don't know me. You don't know me. Sweep the leg, Johnny.
Pardon me.
I want hate on the ground.
Them gal have enough body. Get almost.
Holy hell! Excuse me.
Push me and I'll beat your ass.
What it do? IPO, she cool and shit. But she be tripping on that. Get a job, any job, bullshit. Hell yeah, I'm trying to make some guap.
Y'all got nothing, do you? Liquor shots. I'll fuck you up.
Wow, I'm Rasta. Yo, me there Beachwood City, man. Can't pick me up.
Sorry, man. I can't do that just now.
Yeah, man. No problem, man. Just call me when you're free.
Damn, Black, what the fuck?
Holy shit! Damn, son, that was like some video game shit.
Ain't this some shit? I'm done, gangster. Next move's yours.
Control, we have an injured civilian in West. Firefight contact.